The lockdowns are breaking down, but now they're saying that protests are actually spreading the virus, plus the fight to open up schools. Gavin Newsom of California threatens to fire first responders unless he gets federal money. A judge in the Flynn case doesn't care if the FBI 302 was lost. Another vaccine candidate shows promise, and some updates on the Pensacola shooter. Here's a hint. He was tied to Al-Qaeda. That's coming up. Welcome to the Buck Sexton Show, everybody. I trust you had a good weekend, able to relax a little bit, try to get ready for another week in this changed country we live in, but hopefully temporary. Temporary if we keep our wits about us, if we understand that what is going on in the country is largely now, unfortunately, of our own making, that this was a decision, that this was not a necessity. We did not have to go into a depression, and that the data does not support at this point the continuation. Let's put aside for a moment whether we should have done this at all. The data increasingly looks like it does not even support that we should have done in the past, but we also should certainly not continue this any longer into the future. This has gotten completely and utterly out of control. All right. And of course, absolute and maximum control is the purpose behind it. So it's out of our control. It's in the hands of the government, of our overseers, of the bureaucratic overlords that now get to determine whether you can leave your house, whether you can open your business, do your job. The Cuomo briefing now in New York, for example, is, all right, today, another day, numbers down, good. Okay, next slide, numbers down, good. Okay. Now, everyone, I'm going to repeat everything I've already said. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that repetition is when you've said something and you say it again for clarity, or perhaps because you have already said it and you don't know what else to say. You know, these are the things that you're hearing from Governor Cuomo, who has, I think, a lot to answer for in New York. You're also seeing the fight over budgets, over federal money. I mean, all this is going to continue to play out. So before we can even really deal with a lot of the problems that we are seeing, the first step is going to be letting us out of our gosh darn houses for more than just the essential needs. It is time for us to go outside. You know, here in the city, I mean, I can't speak to what it's like elsewhere across the country right now. I can't speak to what you're seeing in your town or your city. But in New York, I will say over the weekend, I was out, I was walking. I do not wear a mask in open air. I don't do this to be defiant. I just refuse to cave to this bizarre insistence, despite the lack of evidence for it, that wearing a mask makes you safer, that wearing a mask makes you better in open air in public. Indoors, I will say there's a major CDC study about influenza, so maybe you could say, well, this is so different from influenza, although nobody would really be able to explain to you why that's the case in terms of transmission. Maybe it's a bit more transmissible, but the similar mechanism, certainly. There is that CDC study that said they're not even really sure that masks do all that much from influenza. I mean, I think a part of it would be if the virus can get inside either through your, if it's able to either get behind the mask if it's aerosolized, or if you touch your face, even with a mask, it's then able to get in, or perhaps it goes, I would assume it's possible that you can get the virus in your eye, which means that if there are cloud particles, if there are particles of it in a cloud, you would think then you could get it unless you had goggles on. Anyway, I don't wear a mask out in public for those reasons, and people look at you strangely here now. This has become a very explicitly political decision, and it's really also a virtue signaling exhibition now. It's like if you wear a mask, you're showing everybody that you're a good person. If you wear a mask, you're showing everybody that you care about the next person. And here is a woman on social media. I don't know who she is, but this went viral over the weekend. And there's all this talk of Karen. Karen is, producer Mark, is this correct? Karen is a kind of prototypical upper middle class white woman from the suburbs who wants to tattle on everybody. Is that a fair description of what a, quote, Karen is?
Yeah, and she has the I want to talk to your manager look on her face. Yeah, that.
Right. She always wants to talk to your manager. Here is a woman named Rebecca Brand who was videotaping herself horrified. There were people on a beautiful sunny day at the beach in open air, not dressed like they're in, not in hazmat suits. Play clip 1.
Oh my God, not one person with a mask on. Everybody is here and nobody. Yeah, oh my God, that's what I'm saying. Oh my God. Look at all those people. There's like 20. What the heck? What are we doing to you people?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Brown, and I'm flipping out because Governor Newsom announced that this Friday we are no longer going to be on total lockdown. We're opening back up. I'm flipping out because people haven't been wearing masks, and this is going to be even more loosey-goosey than ever before. I think it's all going to go downhill from this point on. But as people start mingling more, doing more, getting on the street, buying more, all of that, as you know, is opening up for the COVID-19 to take over and that coronavirus to just decimate our towns wherever we live. And with people not wearing masks, I am no longer protected from their sneeze, their cough, their spewing because they're talking loud to me because they're so happy to see me.
Gosh, we better just wear masks forever. Oh, gosh. Yeah, all those people. I'm no longer protected. You're in open air. The chance of you receiving enough viral load on a beach near salt water with blasting sunlight, somebody would have to be effectively spitting in your face. Based on all the science, based on everything that we've seen, all the studies that have done, highly, highly unlikely. But this is the attitude you're going to have now. We have to break people of this attitude. This is what has to happen. We have to break people of the, you must do what I say because you no longer have freedom based on my fear. Fear does not get to eradicate freedom. This is what, there's a lot of people in this country that have to learn this lesson. You don't get to say, well, I'm concerned. I have an irrational, even unscientific concern about the spread of this disease, and therefore you will do what I say because I'm so scared. And the people in charge are too cowardly and too reckless to accept that they've made terrible decisions along the way. And now what they really need to do is take on the mantle of the restoration of freedom that needs to happen in this country. They won't do that because that comes with risk. And as we know, politicians, they don't like risk. Politicians don't want the possibility of being told that they're letting people die. They also don't want to cede power. They don't want to hand back to us the authority that they have taken for themselves. And I would just tell you, my friends, and let's never forget this, the biggest lesson in this mess, the biggest lesson of all, is never willingly hand over all your rights and freedom to government. Government is not your friend. As you know, government is not going to keep you safe and warm at night. But if you meekly obey, it will allow half-wits to force a depression and lock you in your house. And that's where we are now. That's what we have been suffering through. Someone explained to me, why is it the case that in Europe, including in countries that have a much higher per capita death rate than we do, in Europe, you have countries that are opening up cafes, restaurants, and schools, whole countries. And yet we still have here in New York City, oh, no, you can't go into a coffee shop. You can't open a retail store. You can't do these things. California, which has been very moderate in the cases that it has had, right? It has a moderate level. It has not had a true crushing epidemic, and it's very fortunate in that regard. California is now saying they're going to be locked down till what? July, maybe August. The economic devastation from all this is going to be mind-blowing when we finally understand it. And the trillions of dollars that are at stake, I mean, the politicians, like little piggies at the trough, are all trying to make sure that they get not just their share, more than their share, because it benefits them to do so. And all the while, they have these people yelling, we need more testing, we need more testing. That's what the lockdowners yell. Problem is, we already have, even here in New York City, a dramatic overcapacity for testing. We're only using about a third of the testing capacity that we currently have. 1/3. And you know what we're being told now? Go get more tests. People don't want to get more tests. I don't want to show up and get a swab in my nose for no reason. I have no symptoms. Unless I have a reason to do this, if I'm going to be around people that are particularly at high risk, or if there's some... And how often am I supposed to do this? I could get a swab and be infected tomorrow and be contagious in 4 days. So how much asymptomatic testing are they really expecting we do? They haven't thought this one through. They haven't worked it out yet. But once again, obey the experts. Hysteria drowns out the obvious reality here that everybody can see. But that's not going to stop them. My friends out in KEIB, Los Angeles land, here is what Gavin Newsom is saying about schools in your state. Play 11.
President Trump has vowed that, quote, schools are going to be open. Is he right? Will schools in California be open this fall?
I think some schools will not be. Many schools will be. And it's all conditioned on our ability to not only keep our children safe, but to keep staff and faculty safe, to keep the community safe. So it's all predicated on data, on science, on not just observed evidence, the reality on the ground. Each part of California is unique and distinctive. Each region of the United States is unique and distinctive. And certain conditions will present themselves favorably, some unfavorably. So I think it's a question that is a difficult one to answer in absolute terms. There's nuance, but we are moving forward in hope and expectation that we can start that school year very strategically and methodically, again, based upon the health as a prime frame of reference in terms of those decisions.
Man, a lot of smooth talking, blah, blah, blah from that guy. A lot of talking around in circles. Here's what the answer should be. Children are at almost zero risk from this disease, and children are very unlikely to be vectors passing it to adults. Not impossible, but very unlikely. Again, based on, now we have studies, now we have additional data and science. When all these decisions were made 2 months ago, it was projections, it was fear, it was, oh my God, look at what's happening in Italy, and look what's going to happen here. And we were told that, the storm was coming, batten down the hatches, do what we say. Yeah, we'll do that for a few days, maybe a few weeks. We're not going to do it for months. It's time for mass noncompliance. I'll get more into that later on, but people should refuse some of these stupid orders. I'm happy to see this gym owner in New Jersey who's saying, no, I'm going to open up my gym. Okay, people can go to the gym. You know what can happen if you go to the gym, even in pre-pandemic times? You can get MRSA. It has happened before. You can get antibiotic-resistant bacteria from working out at the gym. It has happened to people, and that's really nasty, and it can kill you. But you know what? You hope that your gym is relatively clean, and you take your chances. You also can get a blood clot in the brain, and die on the treadmill or lifting weights. That can happen. You don't sit around worrying about it. It's all about what is acceptable risk, and adults in good faith and with good judgment can have those kinds of conversations. People that think the government can protect them from all risk and will guarantee them that they all get to live, 76 years or whatever the average life expectancy is. Well, I know it's different for males and females, etc. But, we all get to make it to 80, the government says, or make it beyond 80, whatever it is. That's not something the government can do. And it never will be able to. So we need to move away from this. We have had a failure of philosophy here. And it is that the government is here to protect you from all risk, including unreasonable expectations of security. You should have a reasonable expectation that the government will do some stuff to help you out, protect us from invasion by a foreign country, will execute the laws faithfully. Law enforcement will show up if someone's, attacking you or breaking into your house, although you still want to be armed and be able to take care of it yourself if you can. But all of these things, minimal expectation is what you should have from the government. Not that it will protect you all the time. And I'm just happy to see that over the weekend you had people who were out, at least here. And this is the worst place for COVID-19 response in that we've had the highest number of deaths, the most cases. And this place is as blue and left-wing and statist and progressive as any place you'd find anywhere in the country, really. So we've had it very tough in that regard. But as we look now at what's happening, people just, they're done. If it's beautiful outside, the weather's warm, they want to live their lives. People want to take risks. If you don't want to go outside, don't go outside. But don't tell people that they can't go outside either, even if you're staying inside because you're so scared of what would happen if they go outside. No, that's not a country that we can live in. That's not a free country. So you ask yourself, is America a free country? Another little thing, I thought this was a free country when you want to get a little huffy about being able to do something or say something. That's a question that we should ask now, and it's one that doesn't have an easy answer. Because the imbeciles who have been telling us all along to just do as they say and we'll all be safe, they weren't telling you the truth. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not keeping you safe, and they're doing incalculable damage to the economy, to our ways of life. These are months that we'll never get back. Remember that, too. These are months you'll never get back. Time is the one commodity you can never get more of. The government's just stealing it from you like you're a prisoner. That's what they do to people who break the law. They take their time. They take time away from them. That's what's happening here. I say we take it back.
The mortality for children 0 to 18 is virtually zero. It's not exactly zero, but it's close to zero. It's 0.0001%. It's very, very small. And this virus is very, very deadly for the elderly and for those who are in nursing homes, but it actually is not deadly at all for those who are young, and we should get them back to school, and we should have a debate over this. Look, this is so bad that I know people in my state that are going to send their kids to grandparents in other states because our idiot governor doesn't want to open the schools. That's what's going to happen is ultimately people are going to move to venues or send kids or even buy, rent an apartment in a state that does not have a draconian shutdown of the schools. That's what this is going to come to.
He's right. And unfortunately, it should come to that. I mean, the truth is that if you're in a state with a governor who is effectively being a moron by thinking that kids are at unacceptable risk from COVID-19. They're just not. Children should be allowed to go back to school. We are taking from kids on behalf of, the political system, really, at this point. It's just this has all gotten so political. And you have the average age of teachers in the United States, according to the Department of Education, is 42. So you've got 15% of teachers are less than 30 years old here. If you're less than 30 years old, your risk from this, so I know that's only, that's less than 1 in 5, but that's a fair number. Maybe we have to have bigger classroom size. Maybe we have to find a way to, if you're a teacher over 50 or over 60, I can understand why you'd have your concerns about this one going back in the classroom because of COVID. But if you're under 50, what we're going to now say you can't come in. People have been through flu seasons. I mean, kids, all the teachers I know say that kids come in with a lot of stuff that you got a lot of coughs and colds and sneezes and measles and all kinds of things. So what are we going to do with our school system? We're going to keep it shut down? No, of course not. The schools should be open, and anybody who's saying otherwise just isn't looking at the data.
I just want to make something clear. It's very important. Vaccine or no vaccine, we're back, and we're starting the process. And in many cases, they don't have vaccines, and a virus or a flu comes, and you fight through it. We haven't seen anything like this in 100 and some odd years, 1917. But you fight through it, and people sometimes, I guess, we don't know exactly yet, but it looks like they become immune, or at least for a short while and maybe for life. But you fight through it. But what we'd like to do, if we can, is the vaccine. I think we're going to be successful in doing it, and hopefully by the end of the year.
Fight through it. We're back. Vaccine or no. The president is right. This is what we need to do. This is what our mindset needs to become. Otherwise, we're just allowing ourselves to, we're destroying ourselves. We're destroying ourselves as a country, as a society. Wait for a vaccine? How long do you think you're going to wait? What happens if the trials are correct? Now, look, I like any positive news that I can give you. Positive news is something that we should be thankful for, and we should share it, always with the caveat of, if something's not yet decided or done, well, fine. But, for example, Moderna, a big pharmaceutical company, just said, and they had a big rally in their stock. So if you own Moderna, lucky you, 26% went up after reporting a positive phase 1 result for a potential coronavirus vaccine. That's after 2 doses of its vaccine. All 45 participants in a trial, when they checked them out, all those 45 participants had coronavirus antibodies. If antibodies don't work against this, it would be bizarre, right? The problem with the flu is that you get new strains of flu every season. But people would say, well, look at cold viruses. You don't have total immunity to those. Well, yeah, but because there's so many different kinds of colds out there. But this COVID-19 specifically, this coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, as it is referred to by the scientific community, if you have antibodies to this, the mutation of it, the different strains of it are overwhelmingly likely to be less dangerous and less lethal. Now, that's not a promise. That's not a guarantee. But so if you are safe from this, chances are you're going to be in a position to not have to worry about this at all, right? I mean, meaning if you're safe from it now, at least by the time we figure out what's really going on here and we have the vaccine trials and it goes through, maybe then this will be passed. I mean, they also don't really understand entirely how it is that some of these viruses just go away, which happens over time. Not all viruses just go away. They can live in human populations and come back, but some viruses do just. So we don't know. There's so many unknowns here. But Moderna had a good phase 1 trial, phase 1 results. So there you go. So it shows that it at least can do something against this disease. So that's some good news. Now we have to convince other parts of the country that this has to happen. This has to be a moment in time where we recognize that the left has a very big incentive here because of the minimization of the possible blowback on any governors in Democrat states. I also remember, and people don't spend a lot of time on this now, but I remember how there were a lot of left-wing pundits who were initially telling us that the red states and the redder parts of the country, this was out there. You can find this online. The red parts of the country, there'll be a lot of death in the red parts of the country because they don't believe in science and they don't believe. It was a horrible thing to say, a vicious, stupid, and as we now see, also incorrect thing to say. It is the cities and it is the blue states that have been hit the worst by this. In fact, some of the bluest parts of the country are, in fact, the worst hit parts of the entire country. And so now those states, those governors want maximum protection from political blowback from reopening, want to make sure they maintain. I'm going to walk you through their mindset, right? We understand what's going on here. They want to maintain their ability to blame Trump for this, right? That they want to make sure that to the degree they can, the economy stays in this frozen state for as long as possible, because it is more likely then you'll have a Democrat wave election, not just for the president, but also for the Senate in the fall. They're having dreams of Obama's first year in office again when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So that's a part of this. They want to squeeze as much money out of the federal government as they possibly can. And that's also where Pelosi comes in here with what everyone is just saying is a shockingly unserious. I mean, of course, they're calling it the heroes bill. I mean, they might as well call it the, unicorns, fairy tales, and, magic rainbows and pots of gold bill. But those are all the different factors. And that's why we need to look at what's really happening now with the coronavirus bailout bill. Whether you call it a bailout, you call it a rescue package, you call it a stimulus. Here, for example, is, let's start with what they are saying about this. First, Pelosi wants to focus on how the CDC was cut in Trump's budget. I had to deal with this on the Bill Maher show. Trump doesn't set the budget. The CDC did not get a big budget cut. All right. So I don't know. I mean, she focuses on this. This is a distraction. This is it's a red herring. Pelosi specializes in that, though. Play 13.
Did the CDC let the American people down? Well, the CDC was grossly cut in the president's budget, but setting aside how we got here, let's talk about how we go forward. It is important for us. The American people want the economy to open up. We all do. We want our societies to open up. We all do. And in order to do that, we have testing, tracing, treatment, and isolation. And that is the path. It's what the scientists advise. That is what we do in the HEROES Act.
She just is going to keep saying this. This is not an answer. Test, trace, treat, isolate. Guess what, Nancy? 50% of people, at least, are asymptomatic. How are you going to get them all to be tested? They're spreading the disease all over the place. What we're seeing is the government tried to prevent or tried to save us from the process of achieving herd immunity. And we're going to end up moving toward herd immunity as a society anyway, just with massive economic damage and the erasing of freedom that we have seen happening here, right? The seizure of your basic rights. But we're still heading toward a percentage, once we get 40, 50% of the population to have been exposed to this and have antibodies, now you're talking about getting close to a herd immunity level. I mean, true herd immunity, I think, depends on the virus and how much it spreads, how fast it spreads. But it can be much higher than that, 80, 90% of the population. I think for measles, because that's so contagious that I've never even heard anyone explain why it can be so much more contagious than other diseases. But you have to have a very, very high level of infection and antibodies, or antibodies to it, I should say, for people to have herd immunity. But Pelosi here, notice how she dodges on the CDC, because the CDC is part of the permanent bureaucracy. It's part of that unaccountable tier of government that has far too much authority in our lives. But unfortunately, as we see, we have to rely on it sometimes. And we're being told that test, trace, isolate, test, trace, treat, isolate. That was Pelosi's cute little phrase. That is what we need to do here. Just remember that in the early days of this, the CDC was not able to get a test out in time so that we could have gotten ahead of this thing. People keep saying we should do what South Korea did. No. You need to stop, test, trace, isolate as soon as you're getting cases. We've had cases since January, at least. You think showing the CDC taking an extra 4 weeks or whatever it was to turn around a test that actually works? And that's starting in what? February, March? You think that's going to be okay? It's outrageous. These people don't know what they're doing. They don't have the answers, and we should not subject ourselves to living in the bizarre fantasy land that they create, where if only we had listened to them more, listened to the experts more, everything would be so much better off. It's wrong. We have Kennedy, Congressman Kennedy, saying on the $3 trillion virus package. You want to hear about this? Play clip 9.
It's $3 trillion for one thing, every penny of which we would have to borrow. That's $3,000,000,000,000,000,000,000. It's not going to pass the Senate, nor should it. My fellow Republicans in the Senate have tried to see things from the Speaker's point of view, but we can't get our heads that far up our rear ends. And I think any fair-minded American would agree once they read the bill.
Senator Kennedy of Louisiana there is he is colorful in his speech. That is for sure. But this is now going to turn into another one of these fights. And Pelosi is going to do everything that she can to make sure that the media has an opportunity to bash Republicans for being heartless and cruel, when what we really see happening is Democrats are going to use this. They're going to exploit this moment in time for their own purposes. They're going to exploit this opportunity to try to get things they would not normally be able to get through the legislative process by holding people up. I mean, Gavin Newsom, here's a perfect example. There's an old ploy in politics. They call it fireman first, right? And fireman first means that whenever somebody, and usually this applies more in cities, sometimes state level, but cities or towns, whenever someone threatens to cut the budget, They just say, oh, well, I guess we're going to have to shut down all the firehouses. No more pay for firemen. And you say, well, hold on a second. What about the, $100 million we're spending on, bloated pensions for former government workers? What about the money we're spending on administrators who don't really do anything? And, there's always so much fat in the government. But the moment that you try to trim that fat, what you're told is that everybody's an essential worker. Everybody's a fireman. Everybody has a job that, first they just say firemen and police because we know they are essential. So that's their favorite move, right? And then if that gets pushed back, they'll say, oh, well, no, we can't get rid of that person. But the first level is always, if you try to touch our budget, it's going to turn into The Purge, for those of you who've seen that movie, because we're going to let all the cops go. Or your house will burn down because there'll be no firemen because we're going to let all the firemen go. And everyone says, well, hold on, maybe we can't cut the budget. See, this is the classic move that they pull. And you're going to see it in this bill. Congressman Crenshaw, Dan Crenshaw from Texas, talked about the HEROES Act. This is what he said. Play 20.
Today's theatrics are shocking. 30 million jobs, 35 million jobs lost, businesses and livelihoods ruined. And while American grocers, nurses, and workers kept America going, Democrats kept Congress in hiding for the past 3 weeks. Hiding is fear. It is not leadership. And when we finally reconvene, we get this. Politico summed it up best. Neither this bill nor anything resembling it will ever become law. It's a Democrat wish list filled up with all the party's favorite policies. Is this a joke? Because it certainly isn't based on reality. Reality would be working here for the last 3 weeks, examining each problem our nation faces and working together to find the best solutions. That shouldn't be all that difficult, since I would presume we still have the same goals: mitigate the virus and save our economy and society. Right? That is still our goal, isn't it? If it is, then stop playing games. $3 trillion of virtue signaling to your base is no way to govern in the midst of a crisis, and you know it.
Fire from Congressman Crenshaw. That's what I like to hear. Obviously a rising star in the Republican Party, and he knows what's going on here. Remember Nancy Pelosi, when people were truly desperate because there were no federal funds yet approved to go to those folks who lost their jobs and their businesses are shut down because the government dictated they must be. Pelosi wanted to play games then. Oh, but now she cares so much about people? I don't think so.
No, I'm not crazy about it. Democrats are not crazy about it. Democrats talked about this bill going nowhere. And it's really sickening that the Democrats are using this opportunity to enforce their socialism. Remember, what is this bill that they just passed on Friday? Well, it's about pot. It's about prisoners. It's about politicizing election law, prioritizing illegal immigrants, and pensions. These are all things that are socialist wish list that they've been trying to pass long before COVID ever came to this land. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, knowing that it will not go anywhere. They're just using this as an opportunity to restructure government. And I'm not just saying that. That's what Democrats say. Joe Biden said it the other day. Their whip said it, Clyburn. It goes beyond AOC. It's now throughout the entire Democrat socialist base of what they want to utilize this opportunity to. Because when we wanted to help small businesses with their loans, Nancy Pelosi went to the freezer to stop it.
Here's my concern. Just as you have, the body has its defenses against pathogens, bacteria, viruses, parasites. And if your overall immunity is reduced, you are more susceptible, from any one pathogen, you're more susceptible to all of them, right? If your overall immune system is overtaxed, then there can be secondary infections and other problems can come up. Right now, the American people and our sense that we have rights, that there are freedoms that must be respected, that there is a contract with the government that we all enter into, known as the Constitution, that it can't just be violated on a whim. We are suppressed in our desire for freedom. And I worry that as we start to have some of those freedoms given back to us, we'll be so grateful that we're finally being let out of the prison, just piece by piece, step by step. We're being pulled into the light of our lives again, instead of being shut away in the darkness of lockdown, that we'll just allow them to get away with all kinds of nonsense. You know, we'll be looking at the one hand that's offering us, okay, fine, you can start to open up stores. All right, fine, you can start to work out at the gym. You can go and, you know, see relatives. You can try all these things. But on the other hand, they're gonna be putting out there, oh, and we're going to redistribute wealth on a scale never before seen in human history. We're going to spend money, which is your children and children's children's money, on a scale never before seen in human history. We're going to fund all of our most progressive left-wing priorities, and you better not say anything about it, because then this other hand that's giving you freedom, perhaps it starts to clench once again. Perhaps we start to tell you to get ready for another round of lockdowns because we say so. This is volatile. This is fissile stuff for a government, my friends. Don't forget it.